So you've had a week to think about your advanced topic, and so that's what I hope we'll discuss today. Peter just joined, so I don't know who's not here yet, but we'll discover that as we go along. So the format that I'll do with class here is give it to you guys first to give your reports. And today, if you want to expand on whatever it was you suggested last week, by now you might have done a little research and found a little something. Some of you might have even implemented something or found a demo game that demonstrates, and you can of course share a screen anytime you want to show me what you've got, and that's all fine. When you're all done, I'll then discuss one of my advanced topics, just things that I've put some depth into and fiddled with and figured out how to do things. And today I'm going to talk about network games when my turn comes. So I'll usually go through alphabetically, either forward or backward. And today being the second class, I'll start with Mr. Apon. Are you here?
Yep.
Where are you? I don't see him. Okay, he's not here. Well, people come late.
He is here.
He is here?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You know, it's like the world of little squares. There was some TV show that was Celebrity Squares or something like that, where they
Hollywood Squares.
Hollywood Squares, that's it. So we're all playing Hollywood Squares now, and this is your life, Don. Go ahead. So.
All right. Yeah. I talked about mine a little bit before, but I wanted to make a 2D based turn-based combat kind of game, and the main big thing about it is I wanted to have the rooms that you go through procedurally generated. The way I thought of it takes, I don't know, I'm gonna have an example of a game that it's really inspired by. It's a game called Slay the Spire, where it's more of, instead of like walking through the rooms, you have like a map, and on that map it shows like what kind of room it could be. Someone said they like that game, where it could either be like a monster fight or like a place you can buy stuff at, and you click on the map, and then it will generate whatever that room is.
Yeah.
And every time you redo like the game, it will have like a different map on there. So you could start with like, oh, this has like 3 monsters in a row, but if you play it again, it might be something different. So that's like one of my big inspirations for it, for sure.
That's great. That sounds like a really good. That's a good idea. Now, in terms of everyone else's response, I do actually keep track of people who speak in class, and because of the fact that it takes me a while to learn people's names, when you offer a question or suggestion, please state your name first, your last name, since that's how I keep track of things. So does anyone have any comments on Donato's 2D turn-based combat game based on, what was it based on?
Well, the map is based off of a game called Slay the Spire, but the combat itself, in that game, it's a card game. I was thinking basing the combat like more like a traditional turn-based game, like Final Fantasy or something.
I love that you guys have a vocabulary of video games that I unfortunately don't share because I don't play video games. But so many of you talk about, I want to have a controller like in such and such, and aesthetics like in, you know, it's great. I love it. So any comments from the audience here on Donato's? And don't be shy.
I've played a bunch of Slay the Spire and Final Fantasy Tactics. I
who
think
are
that those
you?
will. I'm Forrest Swift.
Forrest, okay.
I think that that'll be a great combo. I think that sounds really cool.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited for it. One of the things that I'm still debating on, depends on how much time I have, is making it so maybe you have, because if I make enough characters, I might make it so there's a party of 3 instead of just one person. Similar to I think Final Fantasy. I only watched my older sibling play that game. Never actually got to play it myself when I was younger. So I think that has 3 people in a party.
You mean three human players?
I think it's usually one person controlling 3 of them. Like you basically have 3 characters you control and you go through their turns individually.
Okay. Yep.
So I'm thinking about doing something like that if I end up having enough time to make all 3 of them.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds cool. Any other comments or questions?
I'm Peter Kluke here. So are you thinking of like making like a dungeon crawler kind of deal with like the procedurally generated like rooms and stuff? That's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's similar to that. It's someone also said it here, like a roguelike game in the chat, and it would be something like that where it's different every time, pretty much. Like the loot you can get is randomized, and the rooms are randomized.
There are a number of good tutorials on procedurally generated dungeons, and I didn't post his code, but one of the games I showed last week was elaborately generated dungeons. Okay, anything else? All right, Abby, Boucher.
Yeah, so I'm still trying to nail down the exact specifics of how I want the gameplay to work. I talked last week about kind of doing like a puzzle escape type thing. I want to keep the puzzle aspect, but I think I'm going to set it outside. Also kind of drawing inspiration from, I don't know if anyone here knows what geocaching is or has done like a really cool like multi-cache or a puzzle cache. Something kind of like that, where maybe you have to find different locations and then see, one of the big problems is I'm still trying to figure out what the end goal is. Do you put a code into something? Do you find a physical location like in geocaching? But something like that, where basically I want to explore an outdoor environment. And my advanced topic, quote unquote, would be just like a really complex world generation. Like I just, want to get the graphics looking really, really cool. Maybe do some effects, birds that fly together or something like that also. And I think that also gives me some wiggle room choosing that as like an advanced topic, because if I get farther into the game and want to pick something else as the advanced, then I can just kind of scale down the visuals a little bit. But that's my current plan. And it'd be a mobile game.
Mobile.
And like you could walk using like the gyroscope and touch screen, which sounds complicated, but I have an example to work off of. So actually, like, I don't feel like that would be like hard enough to be my advanced topic, but it's kind of cool doing that. So I want to try it.
Mobile has its own headaches, not the least of which is every time you make a change in your game, you have to compile it and transfer it to the mobile device and get it to work and have a developer's account, and it's not insignificant. But
I've actually worked more with Unity on mobile apps than I have on the computer. So I've worked around some of those quirks, and I figure worst case scenario, I also know how to test it from Unity on the computer. So if I don't get it working on the phone, I could at least screen share it with you guys there.
Yeah, I forget what that's called, remote or something like that. I have a tablet that I was able to connect to a game, and I could do the touch on the tablet, and it worked. Are you Android or iOS?
iOS.
Okay. That's another headache. You have to have a developer's account. Okay. Any comments, suggestions for Abby? No? No? All right. Mr. Campbell Spencer, are you here?
Yeah. I'm thinking of a randomly generated tower defense game where the map is randomly generated each time, and have a couple ideas for how I could do randomly generated towers as well. I could either have like 5 towers and a pool of like attack types, and range and speed and whatever, and I can randomly apply those attributes to the 5 towers and have those be set for each game that you play. Or I can just have base towers, and each round you get like 3 to 5 attributes to pick out of, which you can pay. You could buy them and apply it to a tower individually, and that will be changed every single round. I might also do randomly generated enemies in terms of enemy types with like resistances to certain damages, and how the waves are going to be generated. In that case, I would need to apply a strength to each attribute in each enemy so that I don't have like the first round being super powerful. But I've already created the randomly generated map, so I have that to start out on.
Have you looked at Unity's tower defense tutorial and downloadable assets for tower defense? They have a really fancy setup there.
I haven't yet. I was mostly working on the map generation to see if I could actually get that working first, but I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, definitely check it out, because they've got, you know, a whole system of towers and different kinds of guns, and you know, it's got this flood of enemies that come down the path, and you set up you have a certain amount of cash to set up towers, and they shoot the enemy. It's pretty cool, and it's on the asset store. I forget the name of it, but yeah, definitely, you know, procedurally generated map of tower defense world sounds great. Also, I'm seeing here comments in the chat, which I can now see because I'm not sharing the screen. I can't see chat when I share the screen, but if you want to throw questions into the chat, I'll count that as a comment or suggestion. So I see one from Devin, one from a couple from Forrest, one from Abby. But feel free to speak too. I mean, the more we interact using using the traditional human devices of voice and so forth, the more personal this gets. But I will try and watch chat here and keep things going. So, Forrest said hot and cold system for geocaching, like pinging GPS that increases ping frequency when you're close. That's a good suggestion, Forrest. And Abby responds to Forrest. Okay, so you guys are talking in chat, but you know, if you want to talk in the world, that's good too. So any other comments for Spencer?
Yeah.
Did you have a
name
specific?
You have to say
David.
What?
David Defrumala.
Oh, yeah, you got to use the last name because you're alphabetized by that.
Sure. Did you have any specific theme you were looking for the tower defense, or like there's a lot out there, but you know, is there something like you're specifically making it unique here?
I haven't really decided at all. All I know is that I want it to be randomized in terms of like what you can do with each game that you play. So it's a little bit more replayable than like a Bloons tower defense map or whatever.
A story here. What does the player do? Because you said that it's going to be random and there's going to be random towers, but like, are you able to move those random towers? Do you place other things in addition to the random towers?
So I mean, I'll either go with 5 towers that'll be generated each time you place those towers like you would normally do in any tower defense game, or I would have it be like you buy a tower like shell, and each round you can buy attributes that are randomly generated, and you can apply it to whatever towers you have already placed down. So I'd either have it start with just like a basic tower that just does a normal attack, and then you can add things to it randomly, or you can have 5 randomly generated towers that you just put down and are preset when you generate the map.
The attribute one sounds really cool.
Yeah, Apon here. When you were discussing that, it actually made me think of I've only played a couple of them, but those auto chess games where you have like almost like a pool of these characters, but it could be towers in this case, to purchase from, and you can refresh that shop every time with your cash or whatever you're using. It could be some. I was just thinking something like that, and so you can see what your options are before you purchase them, and they're still randomized, but they're almost like pre-made at the same time. I just thought of that. I don't know if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I'm thinking. Is something like an auto chess type of like refresh the shop each run. You can pay to refresh it and use whatever is generated to build your defenses.
That's great. Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing that one develop. Mr. Carter, Devin.
Yes, hello. I'm still pinging away at my idea for working with AIs. I'm doing it in the realm of an FPS game, going for an arena shooter style game. So Half-Life, Halo, Wolfenstein, that area of stuff. I'm mostly interested in having AIs do squad tactics. So if different entities have a specific role, they'll work together to tackle the player in some way. Also, just having weak points on enemies is always something I love seeing done for a lot of like FPS style arena shooters. Just because like you'll have things like you shoot the enemy in the hand, they drop their gun. You shoot the enemy in the leg, they trip and fall. I just think those kinds of things are neat bits of animation and programming.
So you can wound your enemies.
Yes.
That'll be cool.
Yeah, well, it's the hope. In terms of progress, I'm quite literally only just making models and assets right now.
Okay. Any comments for Devin?
Yeah, I had one. Zapon again. I guess since you mentioned stuff like Halo and Wolfenstein, I was wondering if you had like any particular theme in mind, especially because you said you were starting to make any assets.
I'm leaning a bit into like there's like some areas of sci-fi, but also some areas of fantasy. I kind of like to mix the two.
Yeah.
Like instead of like black magic, like black technology, like crazy fantasy technology.
Like a technomancer and stuff.
Yeah, like the Shadowrun type of stuff.
Cool.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? Don't be shy. All right. Peter Kluge, you're up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so last week I talked a little bit about making like a world exploration game. Kind of go around, exploring the world, finding interesting things. I guess one thing I definitely know I want to do is like play around with like particle effects and sounds. But the other thing I was recently considering is having like kind of like a fog effect. So you can only really see the parts of the world that you've already explored. So it'd be something like, I don't know if you guys have played like Valheim or I don't know, like the Age of Empires games where you have like a mini map, but you can only see the parts of them that you've already been to. So basically you're kind of like filling out a map as you go along and explore the world.
Oh, I like that.
Apart from that, I don't really have a whole lot of other ideas, but I'm kind of poking away at it slowly.
Will it be procedurally generated world, or will you hand build it? And it's fine if you hand build it. It's just more.
I don't really know. Like it'd be fun to do procedurally generated, but I might have to hand build it. I'm kind of up in the air at the moment.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Any comments, questions for Peter? No?
I can ask him something again. I don't mind talking about it. I guess my question would be, besides exploration, what do you imagine, like, if you have any right now, like the goals? So like when I think exploration games, I think like Minecraft has that survival or creating. I just wonder if there's anything like that for this.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I'm still kind of thinking about it. I guess I was considering maybe having like maybe like a hunger aspect. So you have to, as you explore, you have to get food in order to stop a timer from running out, like you just dying. So in order, like it'd be a survival-esque kind of exploration-esque game, probably more focused on exploration, but I'd like to have maybe a survival aspect to it.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I was also just thought of I mean, you could also just have like a reward for exploration, like some sort of like point system. Maybe it's like a treasure hunting thing or like, you know, whatever it is. And then maybe you can have some reward for that. I'm trying to think of something because it sounds like a really cool idea.
That's a good idea.
I really like it.
I'll just pipe in as well, Carter here. Like when it comes to a map for like this kind of environment of like exploration, you probably will want to consider how you're going to do like a 3D height for the map, because like Valheim, for example, has all sorts of underground areas that you end up exploring as you go through the game. And even if we look at like Minecraft mods, for example, the mini map mods for that also take into account height levels, because very commonly you'll be below the surface, and that changes what the mini map looks like.
Yeah, I'm still considering it, but I think that's a good idea as well.
I don't know if you've played The Long Dark.
You got to say your name.
Story.
I have not.
So The Long Dark is kind of like an exploration game. It's also story driven, but you have to, like, there's different elements of like hunger and cold and just tiredness. So as you explore, you have to like find elements to help like keep you warm, like find wood and stuff along your way. Yeah. There's also tons of clothes you have to find, because like if you get your jacket wet, that jacket's going to do you no good in the cold and stuff. Like so the exploration, like you have to go out and find things so you can survive and continue on with the story. So that'd be one.
I always like the games that like tie in the as exploration, like it's necessary in order for you to survive. Yeah. Like tie the survival aspect and exploration like as closely together as possible.
You should check out The Long Dark, because
I will. Yeah,
pretty
that sounds fun.
Intense.
It's required reading for the classes. Go play a video game. Okay, great. Any other comments for Peter? Mr. Defrumala, you're here?
Yep.
Okay.
So I think what I want to focus on is an expansive dialogue system. And what I'm getting a lot of inspiration from is this new game that just came out, I think in past September. It's called Lake. And the entire build of the game, it's an indie adventure game. It's just you're a male woman and you're just going around a lake town and delivering mail. And the big part of the game is talking to the people that you're delivering the mail to. And that's all it is. And it really like drives on the story part. And that's what I want to focus on. But like a game like that is way too boring and I regret paying for it. But I want to do something very like comical and humorous, where you really are doing something mundane, just walking around and talking to people, but it's very funny. It's there's a lot of options with it. So you really can be funny in your own way based on the options you choose, whether you can be mean to the people you're talking to, whether you're nice, empathetic, I'm thinking about putting in objectives and stuff, but I haven't really got far with it yet. I really want to focus on building a story just based off of talking with people and what you choose to say to them.
That's great. That sounds good. Are you going to buy a dialogue system, or are you going to make your own?
I think I might have to. I'm going to try making my own, I think, because I'm broke. But
I'm not familiar with very many of them. But that game I showed last week had a dialogue system, and I could look up what he bought for his system, because it looked pretty robust.
Yeah,
it had multiple.
Yeah, Unity
paths.
offers. Mm-hmm. I know there's a couple when I was just looking up on like YouTube, like Unity dialogue systems. A couple popped up that I liked. It is actually it's easy to make the system, but it's hard to, like, for my idea of like being really expansive, like, and giving a couple options, like that's what's hard. So I might have to go in that direction, but I'm gonna try it first and see what happens.
Well, that sounds like it'll be great. What was the name of the game that you referenced? Lakes?
Lake. It just came out in September, I think. Yeah. It wasn't, it was fun, but I mean, yeah, you really, you go around a lake town and just deliver mail. So, I mean, I might make mine something more like interesting for an objective. I don't know.
David, I have a question for you. My name's Peter Real, by the way. Can you guys hear me all right?
Peter who?
Real, R-I-E.
Real? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so you said you wanted more of a story-based game. Are there certain like story writing cliches that you're going to use, or like how are you going to offer a really dynamic story with your game?
So what I look at, what I enjoy playing, like what I played in the past, stuff like Fallout that has a really like great dialogue system. I think I'm going to go something more like goofy and comical. I don't know if anybody's ever played like Conker's Bad Fur Day. That was one of the first games I ever played. You know, probably shouldn't have played it when I was like 6 on the GameCube. It's very vulgar. But you like a talking squirrel, so you think it's a kid's game, but it's not at all. It's extremely vulgar. It's very like adult humor, which is what I want to focus on. But I want to make it like funny like that, where it's like I'm a pickle or something stupid. Just really just try to like be very imaginative, I guess, with the game.
That's the hardest part. You know, I mean,
yeah.
the nuts and bolts implementation of the coding of these games is one thing, but the coming up with a clever storyline for your game, that's really hard, and we'll see how well you do. But I look forward to this one. This looks very interesting. Did anyone try and play that the God game with the cat? I think I posted it. Maybe I didn't. Anyway, any other comments for David? Comments, questions?
Were you gonna go a 2D or 3D kind of style for this game?
Who was that?
Story.
I think I want to do 3D. Very simple 3D, so very like soft characters, not a lot of like not a lot of detail, very like cartoonish, but yeah, I think I want to make it 3D. Be able to walk around. Kind of like, I know like I never played, but the Pokemon games, if you can kind of imagine like that top-down view where you're kind of walking around like that, where they're now 3D, right? Current ones, yeah, something similar to that, where you kind of got a top-down view and you can just walk around and
Yeah, this is Apon here, and I was just gonna say the top-down, like almost like cartoony, blocky or chibi art style, I think would be hilarious with it, just because if you make the dialogue like definitely more humorous or adult, that contrast is just gonna be like instantly noticeable and be really funny.
That's my hope.
So in chat, I'm seeing Devin say Power Wash Simulator RPG. Who was that a comment on?
That was a comment on like just the narrative adventure of like just doing something arbitrary and making an adventure out of it. I was just thinking of Power Wash Simulator.
And then Matt, you say you could start with a nested JSON file and build a tree. Okay, so you're talking nuts and bolts for how to do this. That's good. Okay, comments received. Anything else for David? Mr. Hallett, Will Hallett, where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay.
My image appears upside down. I can't figure out how to fix it. It's very
oh, we thought that was intentional.
It seems cool, but it's not. It's not. So last time I talked about making like a city building game, like sort of like a SimCity. But I think it's sort of like more in keeping with my vision is more like a farm simulator, just something like a little bit smaller scale with more plants and animals and stuff like that. And looking at sort of like what like a utility based game, like what can a game do in terms of like I guess maybe like decision making about like a small cooperative farm or something like that. And I guess that would have to be like sort of a networked game where different players can decide sort of like collaboratively on the use of different plots, and then sort of run a sort of like, you know, the sort of like farm simulation based on that.
And did you say multiplayer? I mean, are you actually?
That's a lot. I think that's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I will demonstrate that in a minute. How much that?
Okay. Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I'm at. I also there's a board game that sort of like works on this on this idea from the 1980s that I just found about recently. So I might try to like get that board game and sort of like take a look at it and see how it
okay, that's a good
how
idea.
it works, and then adapt those rules. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions, comments for Will?
Yeah, Peter Kluge here. So is the game you were talking about, is it Carcassonne? Because it sounds exactly like Carcassonne, which is a board game where like you build a city and like you claim plots of land and stuff. It just sounds very much like that.
It's not that, but I'd love to get that.
Okay.
That
yeah. Look up Carcassonne. It's a really interesting board game.
How do you spell that?
I think it's CARC. Hold on, I'll try to type it in chat. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Matt typed it in chat.
Okay. Cool. It's not that one. It's called Akalopoly. And my friend told me about it, and it's in German, and I don't speak German, so this will probably be better.
Yeah. Google Translate helps, but it's not perfect, right?
Right. Yeah.
Any other? Go ahead.
Story. You were saying that you wanted to have like ideally like multiple people like kind of collaborate on different ideas of farming aspects. Is that what you were saying? Like if you could do the multiplayer?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Have you heard of Eco?
No.
Okay. So I haven't played it myself, but I've seen a lot of gameplay of it, and it's kind of like Minecraft, just like way more advanced, where like the effects you have on the world, like if you can advance into like steam technology, but you'll end up polluting, so it's like you can't plant as much, so it's like, and it's a multiplayer game, so you have to like cooperate with the other people not to pollute and kill the world and stuff. So I don't know if that is kind of like what you're talking about, but it has a multiplayer like work together environment kind of system.
Cool. Yeah. That's interesting. I don't know. I feel like that's sort of a step ahead of where I've been thinking, because that adds in sort of like a narrative arc, which is pretty hard to, I think. I'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Network multiplayer is definitely a high hurdle. And I know nothing about this, but I've had students in the past who've connected Xbox controllers to their Unity games, which Unity is capable of handling. And I think one of my students connected two Xbox controllers to his single computer playing Unity game. And so you got kind of a cheap version of a multiplayer game where, you know, two people were wired up to the computer somehow. That would be an advanced topic in itself, getting two Xbox controllers to work with Unity. But it's the kind of thing I'm sure people have done. I've seen games where, you know, the keyboard was kind of divided between two players. The Tanks game that some of you might have done as a final project in 312, that had a two-player setup where one player got the WAS and Ds and the other player got the arrow keys or something like that. So if you want multiplayers, you might be able to divide up your keyboard into two players who would then sit very close to each other and type away. I don't know. There are other options besides a full network game for ways to involve more than one player.
There's still a lot of games on PC that have that sort of control option for having multiple people on the same controller.
Yeah.
Towerfall Ascension has it, and there's a Toy Soldiers game as well that has it on PC.
Yeah, I just don't know how you do it in Unity, but that would be for you to discover by finding out whether it can even be done. But I think it can. Anything else for Will? That's good. That'll be interesting. Ms. Harris, you're up.
Hi. I'm still looking into character customization. So I want at the beginning, like in some games, how you can pick through what you want to look like. I don't know how advanced I want to get with it because some of them have like presets that you just scroll through and pick. And then others have like where you can like actually warp the image. And I don't know if that might be too advanced, but I've looked into, there's a couple of YouTube tutorials online. And so I'm going to look into those. I have them saved. I want a story mode game, I think, or like an adventure game. So like you'll go through and you'll pick things up to progress the story. And that's as much as I've got pretty much so far. I've done a lot of research in looking up sources that say I can do it, but I haven't looked far into them if it's actually feasible.
I forget the name of it, and I never downloaded it because I don't do these kind of things, but it was a character modification system that let you actually change the shape of the bodies and so forth. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that can be done. And of course, the dressing of your characters is a whole nother deal with applying textures and just in itself, having a full-blown character customization opening menu, that's a big deal and counts for a lot of points. Of course, once you get them customized and you have them play a game, that's all very cool too. But that sounds like a great topic. I like that idea. A lot of people pay no attention to the beginning of their game. They just throw the player in, and there they are. But a lot of games have a full-blown tutorial for how to play, or as you're pointing out, a character customization sequence where you get to build and potentially pay for things. So this can be how you monetize your game as well. That's very cool. Okay, any questions for Ms. Harris?
Rumsey here. I would love to know if any of the character customization would change aspects of the story, kind of like how in Skyrim, the different races kind of give you different abilities.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if the beginning will have any perks, but I was also thinking of like in the game, you could like pick something up and it might give you like a speed boost or something.
Good question. Good answer. Anything else? Other questions, comments? All right, I'll move on to page 2 here. Matt Harzuski, you're up.
All right. So I think I've mostly finished up my proposal now, I think. I talked before about how I wanted to do something with Perlin noise-based procedural generation, which is what I'm going to go with. I haven't decided whether it's going to be infinite or not, leaning toward infinite generation. But either way, I want to make sure that the edge of the world is like not visible to the player. So like in the case of like an infinite world, it would like generate out far enough ahead that you won't see the edge except at the horizon. Or in finite, it would like generate mountains or something so that it's blocked off.
if you look on the YouTube channel or Cultura from last year's, I think there's a section on procedurally generated infinite terrain. It is a cool trick.
I actually found a good video series on it. Sebastian Legge has like a 21-part series.
Yeah.
That covers a lot of topics. So I think that'll be like an invaluable resource for it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, okay, that's a good advanced topic. Any comments, questions for Matt?
Did you mention what you were gonna story? Did you mention what you were gonna do in the world? I may have missed that.
I don't have a whole lot yet. I do want to have some sort of like mechanic and objective. Like, I kind of like the idea of like, as you explore, having like something like a jetpack or something that has fuel. So you need to be constantly hunting for fuel in order to use that. So you have some sort of, pressure to be doing something.
And some reason to explore the world, I would assume.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And then there might be like monsters that hinder you from doing that or something. And then you can die if you get attacked by them or whatever. So
cool.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm still kind of figuring out the details.
Any other comments? I'm just looking at chat. Okay, go ahead. Next one is Mr. Howe.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, so I was talking before about wanting to do some sort of 2D top-down like dungeon crawler, procedurally generated with, I was thinking something along the lines of, I don't know if you guys have played it, but Enter the Gungeon. So something like that, but a lot of dungeon crawlers seem to be like dark and gloomy, and I wanted to make mine like bright and really fun. So like I was thinking a tropical resort type of thing, like maybe even like shrunk down so you're like fighting crabs or something small like that as the enemies, and just fun weapons like a pool noodle as a sword or something.
Thank you so much. The dark ones, I don't know if it's the gamma settings on Macs, but the dark ones are really dark on my computer. And the first thing I do when I get one of those games is turn on a light so that I can actually see what I'm doing. But yeah, that'd be great. And any procedurally generated level. One of the big issues, of course, is procedurally distributing the assets, the rewards and the penalties, the adversaries and so forth. Everybody who has to kind of know about how the world is laid out. So if you're making enemies that are going to navigate in this procedurally generated world, one of the things you have to do is get the more advanced nav mesh system that allows you to procedurally generate a nav mesh from code. And it is available and it works great. I've used it a lot. It procedurally generates. There's one of the advanced topics that probably you'd find on YouTube or Cultura from last year is a procedurally generated maze that solves itself by using nav mesh. And so that's kind of the idea of what you're doing here. But sounds great. Any questions, comments for Mr. Howe?
You said top down
story.
Yes, story. Sorry.
Your name. I mean, the little window pops up and I see it, but you know.
Right. What was I going to ask? I was going to ask, was it going to be like 3D or 2D or?
Yeah, so like 2D top down. I might be at like slightly of an angle to give some depth, obviously, but yeah.
Cool. Yeah, if you use like pool noodles or, well, I mean, there's a lot of things you kind of pull, but that could be pretty fun.
Super soaker, something like that.
Yeah. Lifeguard tube.
Super Soaker. Yeah, that's what I want to see is a squirt gun in Unity. There's a Unity particle system that's a fire hose that sprays water and actually applies forces to the things that it hits. I use this in the forest fire simulator to extinguish the forest fire. So you could have a look at that. Any other questions, comments for Mr. Howe? Okay, Peter, you're up. Peter Rail. Where's Peter?
I'm right here, Professor. Yeah, so I'm thinking about doing a time trial racing game. I'm gonna kind of base it on the Forza Motorsport series, that interface, and also taking some principles from like Modern Warfare 2, where there's a really intricate reward system, elaborate sandbox, and my ultimate goal is to make a game that's like easy to get good at, but kind of hard to be really good. So yeah, so it's a time trial racing game. There's going to be different maps. There's going to be grassy area, like a snowy track, rainy track, hilly, flat, straight, all sorts of different maps. And what the ultimate goal is to really explore Unity's car physics and utilize each one of these maps to highlight a different element of that discipline. So I'm also going to have multiple cars, weight, overall speed, like handling. Hopefully based it off some real car data. Maybe have like a nice sports car, an SUV, a daily driver, and then something funny like a dump truck where I like really, really like just go crazy with the physics and see if I can, scale it up to just all sorts of like different weird cars. Anyway, so from some light research, it seems pretty math intensive. There's a lot of extreme variation in physics from the car with the track. So it seems pretty coding intensive, but it seems like once you get the formulas built, they're pretty transferable from car to car and map to map. And it seems very doable. There's a ton of resources, and there's also like a lot of flexibility with it. So I can make a really basic car system where you drive and there's certain acceleration and handling like variables based on the map and the car, but there's also a lot of expansion I can do with it. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Forza series, the Motorsport series, but there's so many different things I thought of that I could add in. You could add in tire pressure, the wheel width, camber, anti-roll, and sway bars, suspension, which includes rise height and rebound and like braking force. So there's so many different things I can add in. There's so many different ways I could go with this. I think it might be a little bit more than I can do. I think I got pretty excited with this like proposal, but there is a lot of stuff I could do, and I would really just be happy with coming up with like just getting the math formulas and making some basic car mechanics in Unity, more so than what's in standard asset.
The standard asset car is actually pretty good. It's got I think it has, it has a traction control system and a steering helper, and it, it has access to, you can access the suspension length and the tire grip and all those other things. And there's also the Unity car physics download that has a device for building quickly a car with some kind of sort of presets, but it's a completely different physics system, and the cars behave very differently than the standard asset car. And of course, if you get into the details yourself, I did a tutorial once a long time ago on adding a anti-sway bar to your Unity car. And as I recall, the way it worked is when it found you were cornering hard, it added down force to the inner wheel to give it more grip. I don't remember, but it was, I did do it at some point. But there's a lot of stuff out there on car physics, of course. And I really like the idea of a lot of different types of cars, you know, drift cars versus really sticky, hard to handle Ferrari type cars. And of course, you know, old clunky SUVs that unroll. Yeah, okay, that's great. I look forward to seeing this one. Any questions, comments for Peter? No? Rasheen, how do I pronounce your name?
Rasheen.
Rasheen? Okay. Rasheen, you're up.
Rasheen. Yeah. So I'm still working with haptics in Unity, and I think to do that, I'm going to make a mobile game. And I wanted to make sort of like a maze game riddled with enemies that you have to avoid by paying attention to the haptics, since it'll be like a low light maze and you might not be able to see these enemies before like they can get you. So those will be outfitted with haptics that are like, hey, don't go this way. And I think that will be a top-down view. So I've recently been working on how to just make mobile games on Unity before I can get
Android or iOS?
iOS.
iOS, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious. They both work, and I know for iOS you need a developer account in order to load things onto your phone or whatever. That sounds great. Haptics, you know, that's like really a brilliant addition to the senses that one has in these video games. You know, we have sight and sound and adding haptics, vibration, or whatever you're going to do. It's a great idea and really extends the immersiveness of this whole thing. So, and maybe you know, sound along with the haptics would be interesting too.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Rumsey?
Yeah, How here. I was just wondering, is it gonna like start buzzing like the closer you get to an enemy, or how are you gonna use the haptics to like help you locate enemies?
Yeah, I think it would be like that.
Cool. You could have a radar system where you made a ping, and I don't know, directional sound is a little shaky in Unity, but it does work. You could ping things. I don't know. That sounds cool. I look forward to seeing that one. Any further questions, comments?
Story here. Do you know if there are different, is there just one haptic like module in a phone, or are there multiple? Do you know?
I think there might be one, there might be multiple. That's probably something to
that would be really cool if there were multiple, so you could have, I don't know how well this would work, but if like you kind of had more of a left and a right, you could like distinguish like different directions. I don't know if it seems silly if they had multiple, but I don't know how big these things are. I don't know. It'd be cool if you could separate things out.
Yeah, for sure.
And if it's like a buzzer or something, the frequency of the buzz could convey information. I don't know how the haptics work, whether there's like some little marble inside your phone that jiggles back and forth, but this is fascinating. I'm really interested to see how this turns out. Very cool. Any other comments? Mr. Story or oh, there was a comment.
I just have one quick question. This is Dorothy Harris. Is there going to be like a repercussion for not following and going the wrong way?
I think, you know, if you don't listen to the haptics, you run into the enemy, maybe they kill you. Maybe they just take some of your health. But I think that would be the repercussion.
Your phone goes into an endless loop of vibrating.
That would be terrible.
I wonder how this impacts battery life on a phone. If there's too much buzzing, mechanical movement costs more than photons in terms of energy. So it might be a battery drain, who knows? All right, anything else? Not Mr. Story, you're up.
Cool. So my idea was a puzzle game similar to Portal in the fact that it's going to be a first person kind of 3D game. So I mentioned that I wanted to do something with the rewinding of time. I think that's going to be like the main mechanic. But I got Portal stuck in my head and I thought, how cool would it be if you could like combine the two? So like, I don't know, you had some objects and you moved it through the portal. Like, I don't know, combining reversing of times and portals. So it's like, maybe you like, I'm gonna not explain it. Anyways, so I think that would be cool puzzle wise, combining those two aspects. But then I'm like, I think it would be cool to, if there were other kind of physical aspects, maybe like growing and shrinking objects, and then freezing time, maybe. I think I had another one in my proposal. I can't remember. I don't know. So I've got like 3 or 4 different like physics kind of aspects, and I think it'd be really cool to like mend them all together, with rewinding time being the main one. We'll see how many of those I can like actually implement. And I'm not 100% sure how the player is going to actually mess with them and like decide what objects are going to have these effects. I'm thinking maybe something like, at the moment, just a paint gun to like splat a color and kind of have the art style of Splatoon, like just a splat onto an object, and each color kind of represents whatever effect.
Did you do that advanced training back in 312, the splat gun?
No, I didn't. No.
Oh, there is one somewhere.
Yeah, at the moment, I've just been like pulling together like resources for all of these different mechanics. I don't know how well they'll play together.
Bracky's is the place for you to go look. He does rewind time, and I think he did portals too of a sort. And so,
right.
That's all very cool.
Yeah, his rewind time was actually like, wow, that's so smart and seems so simple. Like,
yeah, it's and it works really well. It's surprising.
It does. Yeah. So that's the idea.
And any comments, questions for Mr. Story?
Yeah, I got one. This is Apon. What I instantly thought of, and it's not really a puzzle game at all, but like I just remember because it was a really cool level in that game. In Titanfall 2, there was like a rewind time level, and it would go really far back. This isn't like a 10-second rewind. It completely changed the level. So it's like you're in the past. So you're in present day, this door is blocked off because like a bunch of wood broke it down and it degraded over time. If you go back in time, it's like a clean facility, the door is open, but then because of that, there was like some sort of like obstacle. Otherwise, like it was an enemy, like some robots were there because it was back when it was still working. So I just thought of that. That would be cool for something that's like really drastic, but you could also just make it more of a 10-second rewind instead.
Yeah, I think I was going more of the lines of like, hey, there's a gap that I need to cross. Like maybe I'll just move a block kind of from the end goal to the starting, and then you get up to there and it's like you rewind time and you're able to like walk across the thing that you moved.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I had one of the past games, the gun that the player had was not a shooter, but was a shrink or expand ray. And so the whole puzzle of the game was how to get from here to there with this shrink expand ray gun that you could, point at things and make them change size and get across the gap and you know, it was all, and it was pretty complex puzzles because you had the, you know, they were multi-step things. You had to move this and then that, and, you know, puzzles, hard puzzles are hard to make. So, but that, yeah, that sounds great. And the rewind time, if you can figure out a way to use that, that's always very cool. Any further questions or comments for Elijah? So, pride of place here, Mr. Swift.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
So I'm thinking of doing some sort of action RPG with like fighting bosses and getting drops from those bosses that you'd use to like craft and upgrade equipment, so kind of in the theme of like Monster Hunter. With the main gimmick, the main advanced topic being multiplayer, I'd like to be able to play with up to 4 friends at least as like a starting goal. And then if I could manage it, I'd like to get like large servers, like maybe 20 players, 50 players if possible. But I've heard that multiplayer is really hard, and we're going to learn more about it today. So maybe I'll change my mind on that.
It's actually in better shape than when I talked about it before. Unity has actually replaced the deprecated system, which I only recently got to explore, but it's there, and there's documentation, and it looks like a much more robust system. And there's also Photon.
Yeah, I was looking into Photon actually. It seemed like it was a really easy way to dive right into multiplayer.
I'll talk about some of the difficulties of multiplayer. Okay, any questions, comments for Forrest?
I got a question. This is Apon again. Would this be like a sort of third-person view, or is this like a first-person game?
Yeah, I was thinking third person. I actually found some models that are a little pricey, but look like they would fit really well. I'll put them in chat with what I wanted to do. And I was thinking that might just be easier than trying to create my own models for the 4 different characters.
Oh, wow, those are cool.
You can definitely either purchase or use free assets. You don't have to create content. Mm-hmm. That's new media's issue, not computer science's. Any other comments? No? Well, that was great. Really, they're all great ideas. I'm stunned with you know, the kind of stuff that you guys come up with, and I understand that it might come from playing a lot of video games. So let me share screen here, and I'll talk about network games. And I kind of do this early in the semester because I've had classes where a lot of people wanted to do multiplayer, and it is one of the harder topics, I think. The other issue is that network games in Unity have really been in limbo for quite a while. This blog post that talks about what's coming was from 2018, so geez, that's 4 years ago. And since then, anytime you look at the documentation in Unity for UNet, it warns you that it's deprecated. There's actually a warning on the components when you use network that says this is deprecated and will be removed. I haven't looked at 2021 to see if it's gone yet, but it's still there in 2020 and 2019. But you know, this kind of discourages one from putting a lot of time into UNet. For a while, the multiplayer library that was available was ML API, mid-level networking library. It was in version 0.1.0, and this is the manual that it that it passed to when you went to look at the documentation was the scripting API did have lists of all the different scripting components, but the manual was non-existent. So if you go to the Unity GitHub and look for netcode, there's netcode is now Unity's replacement for the mill app. There's now a Unity Learn page for netcode, so they've really fleshed it out. There's decent documentation, and there's actually a detailed section on how to migrate from either mill API or from UNet, and so it's a much more robust system than I thought it was a year ago. It is limited to 2020 or 2021. There's some nice tutorials that I fought my way through, but they're things I haven't figured out yet. The thing I noticed on the migration page was that the underlying paradigm of a client-server setup is very much the same. And in the migration section, it really, in some cases, it's just a matter of changing the name of your function. In UNet, commands and RPCs had to have CMD or RPC in the beginning of the name of the function. And in netcode, it comes at the end of the name of the function. So changes like that suggest that these things function pretty much the same way. Some of the other things that changed names were like network identity in UNet is now called network object. And there's other things that kind of just, some of them, the names haven't changed, others they have. As such, I'm going to go through a UNet approach to things because that's what I have done, but be aware that switching to netcode is not that big a deal, and that the paradigm whereby these things work is pretty much the same. In this deprecation process, a lot of things have disappeared. The Unity manual used to have a nice multiplayer game thing. It's all gone. This link down here to the multiplayer networking tutorial is gone. I will show you that game anyway. It's simple network, and I'll show you that example in a minute. The tutorial is gone too. So, what are you going to do? So the two concepts that are central to a networking game that Unity seems to approach these through are commands and remote procedure calls. And commands are issued by clients. There's a server that kind of runs the whole deal, and their clients who are the individuals who are playing games, the 4 characters that Forrest talks about. So a client issues a command, but the server executes it. Remote procedure calls, RPCs, are issued on the server and are executed on all clients. So if you're a client and you want to tell everybody in the world to do something, you issue a command that calls an RPC that then applies to all of the clients in the world. So an example of a command is when one fires a bullet. So in some player move script that is controlling our player, and notice this is a network behavior, not a mono behavior, and I'm not sure what netcode requires. We'll have to look that up in the documentation. One of the functions that you get with networking is an on-start local player, and in this case, I'm assigning it to red. But in the update function, there's a variable isLocalPlayer that tells whether the object is controlled by the client or by the server. And so in update, if we're not the local player, it bails. It does nothing. If it is the local player, it goes on to accept input from the horizontal and vertical axes and move the character around. So when this player wants to fire a bullet, they press the space key and a command function, CMD fire, is called, which is going to execute on the server. This is still in the same script. We have this CMD fire function. It needs this command directive. And again, I don't know what the difference might be in netcode. You'll have to read the documentation, but there'll be something similar. And this now executing on the server is going to build the bullet up locally. So it instantiates a prefab, it gives it a position and a rotation, and it gets the rigid body component and assigns its velocity to some value. And then it calls network server spawn bullet that puts one out in all of the different client copies. So this is executed on the server. It makes the object, gives it its initial properties, and then spawns it into the world. And it's got a destroy bullet after a certain amount of time. So the bullet prefab in UNet needs to have a network identity. That's one of the things that I think has to be changed for netcode. And it has to have a network transform component added. The network transform kind of lets you control how much of the physical properties of the object are actually transmitted across to other characters. You can select the full transform, including rotation, scale, and position, or you can limit it to just position and save traffic that has to go across things. So, but that's what the network transform does. So when we instantiate that bullet prefab, it has to have those different components. An example of an RPC, a remote procedure calls, appears in the combat script. And this is the on other characters and on the enemies that we're fighting against, and is designed to keep track of their health and ultimately kill them. The bullet script, this is on the bullet, basically checks whatever it hits and tests to see if it has a combat script on it. And if it does, it calls a take damage function in the combat script that's on the enemies and on the other characters. In order for our health to synchronize among all the different clients, we can put this directive, the sync var, in front of a public variable health, and this will now be synchronized across all of the clients. There's a similar directive in netcode. I forget what it is. And here in our combat function, we have the take damage function. And this tests to see if we're not on the server. So if we're not on the server, it bails. This is only going to run on the server. It decrements the health. It tests to see if the character has died. And if the character has died, it calls an RPC to respawn them. So the client, the RPC respawn has this little directive in front of it, client RPC. and it tests to see if it's the local player, in which case it moves the character back to position 0, or alternatively, there are these things in UNet that have network start position components, which you can then find with a get start position, and this way you can spawn at kind of random positions. So let me have a look at this, and here, this is the game. I'll be putting this up on the Blackboard, but the basic thing about network games is, in order to play them, you've got to compile them. So I have the scene that I'm going to build in here, and I'm going to build this scene, and I'm going to put it in the build folder here, and it's going to replace the one that's there, and I don't have this set up with the right ID, so it's missing that. It should still work. So here's one of the issues about making a multiplayer game, is that anytime you do anything in your game that you have to test, you have to compile the whole thing. And so this is a pretty simple game with hardly any resources. But I've got this compiled version of it, which I can now duplicate and open both of these. And I've got a copy of the game here, and I've got another copy of the game here. And in UNet, we have one of the players gets to host the game, and the other comes in as a client. And so now I'm in the right-hand window, and I'm controlling the red character. Notice in the other person's world, I'm a green character. And over here, I'm in the red character. And spacebar fires a bullet, and those little enemies lose points. Here's a physical object that I can push around with bullets. And of course, I can go and, whoops, I can go over here and get behind this guy and kill them, and then they respawn someplace else. So it's all doable, and netcode works pretty much the same way, and is completely doable. So that's what used to be in the Unity manual, was the setup of that game, and sadly, all of that documentation is gone. Let me close this to save pressure on my memory. So Mike Geig did a whole series that used to be hosted on Unity, the Mary Fragmus series of multiplayer stuff. The Unity link disappeared, but I did find it on YouTube, and there's actually an updated 3.0 version that I haven't done yet. But this is another version of a multiplayer game, and based on the 2.0 version, I kind of addressed a flaw that I felt was there in his game, which was that you couldn't see the adversary's muzzle flash. The way he had set it up, there were two particle effects: one, a muzzle flash, and two, an impact. When the gun fired, there was a flash at the muzzle, and when the bullet hit something, there was a splat impact. And he handled them differently. He made the muzzle flash kind of a permanent part of the character, attached to the end of the gun, and the impact he instantiated when the character came into existence, and then manipulated its position as needed. And each of these particle systems had their play on awake, not checked, and they were manipulated with the play and stop in the script. I followed his structure of command and RPC calls, and these get a little bit convoluted. because of the fact that we're keeping track of two different things, the muzzle flash, the impact, and actually later I'm going to add a bullet too. So we'll see something flying through the world here. So in the gun script, fires the gun with some command. I forget what it is, Z or X, something like that. And it does a ray cast out, and it determines the position of the object that it's going to hit, the hit point. And if the hit point is a player, it calls a command hit player function that takes as an argument the game object that was hit. So the command hit player, and this, remember, is executed on the server, is going to itself access on the hit object its controller script, network character script that controls it, whatever's running the network character around. And it's going to execute on the hit game object a remote procedure call, resolve hit. So this is executed now on every client, but we do limit ourselves to only the local player for the respawning. These characters get killed immediately when they're hit, and they immediately respawn. And what's happening here is that we're kind of turning off the player. We toggle the renders to false, and we're so we've made the character invisible. We've also toggled the controls to off so that the player, having been killed, can't control their character that is no longer visible. And we force them to wait a couple seconds before we respawn them. The resolve hit is going to call this respawn. Here the toggle renders just goes through all of the characters' renders and sets them to be as alive. And the toggle controls turns off the FPS controller and does something with the camera as well to make it so that the camera can't see anything. And the respawn just turns things back on again, turns on the renderer. And if it is the local player, it also turns its controls back on again. So I'm going to apply this to both the muzzle flash and the impact particles. And one other change, I made the impact effect part of the character prefab rather than instantiating it. So the prefab has a muzzle flash and it has an impact particle effect. And this made it a little simpler. I didn't have to instantiate that, which was a call for the server. And it also meant I got to treat both of them the same. So with the muzzle flash, in the gun script, when the gun is fired with the jump key, we call this command muzzle flash with the game object that has been hit. Well, yeah, with the game object that fired the gun. I'm sorry, it's the game object that fired the gun, the player. And in this command function, I've got the game object that fired the gun, I get the network gun, and on the network gun, I resolve the flash on that game object. Now this is happening on all of the different clients as well. So the resolve flash, which is executed on the server and played on every character, tests to see if we're not the local player, because the local player's particle script is playing locally, but on this call, all of the not local players have to go through their their children looking for particle systems until they find the one called muzzle flash, and they stop and play it. With a particle system, it's a good idea to stop it before you play it, in case it's already playing. So impact is handled in a similar way, with one little extra point that we have to also, when we command impact, tell it where we want that thing to be. And we're also passing the game object, the player that fired the gun. I wanted a delay. So from this hit distance, from the hit point, I also get the distance, and I know the speed of my bullet. So I have a delay. And so I don't invoke the splat until after this delay period. And the splat is similar to what we did with the muzzle flash, except now here we're passing on this position where we want the splat to manifest. And in the command impact, we get the gun, call this resolve impact with the game object and position. And in the resolve impact, I've got the flash that I want to instance, or that I want to play. And I've got the position that I want it to play at. And again, in the local player, in the client's view, all of this is done locally. And so this RPC is just going out to all of the clients who are not local and getting their particle systems, looking for the impact one, and putting it at a position and playing it. So that's how we do the bullet splat at a distance. Back in Unity 5, I had all these issues that disappeared when I upgraded to Unity 5.4. There were others here. All of these disappeared, but this was wrestling with UNet. So I mentioned I wanted to have a physical bullet that flies along the path. And this is a little different from the particle effects, because in this case, I am going to instantiate an object. Again, this is handled with a command script that runs on the server. So just after the muzzle flash is triggered and the raycast for the impact point has been executed, I'm going to add this command shoot function here that has a position, a rotation, and a direction. That's going to determine where my bullet goes. And command shoot is, this is run on the server. The object is instantiated with a position and a rotation. That's why I had to pass that in. It came from my character, so I could aim the gun. And I'm assigning it a velocity. For some reason, destroy object didn't work here. So I know what I should have had that after the network spawn. That's why that didn't work. But anyway, I spawn the objects here and they go off and fire, and I've got a destroy script on the bullets, so they clean themselves up. So let me show you that one. And again, one has to go into the build settings here, and we've got the scene that we've got, and we're going to build it. And we have to put it someplace. This is network manual, right? This is network manual. Yep. And so I put it in the build settings and replace the one that's there. And again, I don't have a project ID. And my dog is the one making all the noise back here. She gets restless when the class runs too long. So, and again, these are pretty simple worlds without a lot of assets and a lot of scripts, and it still takes time. So this is one of the big issues. And where'd the build go? Where'd that build go? What were we? This is manual, right? So the build is here, and I should delete that copy and make sure that I've got a copy here, and start both of these. Whoops. Start both of these. And you can, if you want, run one copy in the editor, but I find it a little, and actually when you're debugging and printing things out, that's the only way to do it. So you can run one copy in the editor. You don't actually have to do it this way. So here I am over in the left-hand game, and I've got a little character with a gun, and I can shoot the gun and the bullet goes off. And I've got slow bullets to make things kind of interesting here. And so watch over in the right-hand scene as the bullet goes in front of my player here. And now we'll move over to the right-hand character and shoot a bullet at them. And of course, shoot the character, and they disappear. They're out of control for a little while, and they come back and spawn someplace different every time. There are 2 spawn points in here. And so this is how all of this works, and it's pretty slick, and it works reasonably well. The issues being there are a whole bunch of different steps that you have to go through in order to make things work. More advanced networking games have lobbies, a place where the players join the game. The asset store used to have a network object lobby on it, but it's gone. I've got a copy of it on my Google Drive if you want it. There is a lobby system for netcode. I haven't figured out how it works. The lobby manager, basically all you do is replace the network manager with the lobby manager. They're kind of the same thing. One's a little fancier than the other. Another difference is you need 2 scenes, one a lobby scene and 2 a game scene. And everyone starts off in the lobby and then moves to the game scene. And the lobby manager is a don't destroy unload, so it's carried there. So our game scene doesn't have any players. It doesn't have a network or lobby manager. The lobby hook is a script that lets you set the color of your players and other things if you wanted to. Here's a color variable that's a sync var, so it's up to date on everything. And here in Start, all we're doing is setting its color. But if you were setting weapons or clothing or other kinds of stuff, this is where you might do it. And let me close this one. So here's this one, and I'm not going to bother to compile this. I'm just going to go directly to the compiled versions of it here. So in the builds, I've got a build and a build copy, and I open these. And this is what the lobby looked like. It has access to the matchmaker, which is where the server runs on a commercial server that I believe Unity maintained it. The manual connection is where one of the players here is hosting the game, in which case they're going to need to know information about the IP address and some other stuff in order to actually play over the network. So I'm over here, I'm going to join. Now that I have the 2 players, and in a lobby you specify how many players you want to join. So this one is now ready, and this one is now ready, and the match is going to start. And this is pretty similar to what I had. I've got these 2 little characters. I think I'm running this one over here. This is the red one that I'm running, and over here this is the blue one that I'm running, and I can fire bullets and they hit things. I didn't bother with the scorekeeping, so it just manifests as bombs. So that's all great. And this is, you know, networking is a way bigger topic than just one 30-minute lecture. There are tutorials. The netcode has some good tutorials. The matchmaker, as I mentioned, is something where Unity hosts your game. This was limited to 200 concurrent users. Here's the picture of my network, my developer, showing that I had 2 currently connected users. If you wanted more, you had to pay for them. I mentioned Photon, Photon Pun, which stands for Photon for on Unity networking, Photon Unity networking. There's a free version and there's a $95 version, and I don't know what the difference is between them because I'm not spending $95. There seems to be some support from Unity for these because they did have some tutorials on setting up Photon, configuring their transforms and rigid bodies, and some other lessons. So Photon is a completely different approach. They have their own version of everything, but they have tutorials and sample games and so forth. Let me finally show you some netcode versions of this, and I'm not going to bother to compile these. The way I have a bunch of different examples in here, but in the build settings, I've got all the different examples that I did here. And if I want to play one of the examples, I have to uncheck all of the others and check one of them and then build it. And so this would build it for the first person shooter. And I have in the build folder of this game, which is somewhere over here. Where is it? I think it's in here. And this was, a lot of this was based on, nope, that's not it. I don't know how it ended up in here, but most of these, this was based on something I got from their GitHub. So if I want to play the first person examples here, I've got a copy of the games. I open them, and this looks a lot like the version in that I did in UNet. This does have a password, so I have to, the host gets to specify a password, and the client who's joining the game has to know the password, and join as a client. Press the right button, join as a client. Yeah, I did the wrong password. Let me start this again. I must have mistyped the password. And these, of course, will run over the network too, but so I did ZXC as the password. Let's try and remember that. When I go over here, ZXC, and join as a client. Huh. All right, I don't know why that's not working. Try Ethan. ZXC host. ZXC client. I don't know what's wrong. Something's wrong. Apologies. Anyway, if it does work, And this one has a little color picker that lets you pick the different color of your character. And I think the Z key fires a bullet that damages things out in the world. And I don't know why it's not working. It worked 5 minutes ago. But anyway, I will post all of these. And that's all I've got for today. So let me stop sharing. And any questions? Okay. Well, we finished in before 2 o'clock, so way to go. That was one of the heavier duty lectures that I'll do. Often my advanced topics will not be quite such a flog, but I wanted to get multiplayer out of the way because it's one of the harder topics that people sometimes choose, Forrest, for example, as their advanced topic, and I wanted to get it out of the way. So unless there are any questions, I'm ready to go. My dog is asking to go for a walk here. She's hovering in the background anxiously.
That's a pretty good reason to leave a class.
Yeah, it's a nice day outside. It's cold, but it's a nice day. There she is. Can't see her because she's blurry. Wait, what preferences? Now she's gone, so never mind. Okay, so unless there's more comments or you want to stay and chat privately or you want to chat among yourselves, I'm ready to turn this thing off.
I have just a quick question.
Yes.
For the, not the progress report, for the proposal,
Mm-hmm.
how do you want that like formatted? Because currently I just have like a couple links to different resources and like a sentence about them, but do you want it more formal than that?
It's not formal. It doesn't have to be very long. A page is plenty, but you know, and having resources identified is great. You don't have to, you know, you can say I found this here and provide the link. You don't have to go into great detail. I'm more interested in what your idea for the game is and the fact that you've done some research and found some things. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? All right, well, I'm going to at least stop recording here.